Hello, I'm Jerry Hill. I'm here with Alesia Flye, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction. We are also joined today by Margaret Hendrickson and Kim Muncy, Curriculum Specialist from West Bloomfield School District. Margaret specializes in math and science, and Kim specializes in English Language Arts and Social Studies. First, I'd like to talk with Alesia Flye. Alesia, we hear so much today about the Common Core state standards and what I'd like to ask you what it means, what exactly when we talk about Common Core, what it means, and more specifically what it means in the West Bloomfield School District. So let's start. What are the Common Core state standards and how did they come about?
Yes, Dr. Hill, there has certainly been a lot of discussion about the Common Core standards, and they are a set of common K-12 learning expectations in the areas of ELA and mathematics, and they came about from a panelist or a committee that involved state governors as well as superintendents who developed these expectations. You still have some discretion at the local level or the state level to determine exactly how those learning expectations are implemented, or if they're formally adopted by your state. And in the state of Michigan, we did formally adopt the Common Core state standards, as we refer to them now, in September of 2010.
So why is it felt that they are necessary now?
The Common Core standards were looked at as a means to have a cohesive set of learning standards throughout the country. And so they provide actually guideposts so that if a student moved from one region to another region, and let's say they're a fourth grader, families could expect the same learning expectations or standards regardless of your zip code or the area of the country that you live in. And so again, many states, most states in fact, have adopted these official learning standards. And when you think about when you think about global competition and just remaining competitive from a global perspective, many of the countries that excel in the areas of mathematics and ELA do have a set of standards that they've adopted for their country in particular. So this is one step of establishing that cohesiveness. And the standards are also more rigorous. And so with the job needs and the skills that students need for today's jobs, having standards that require some higher level thinking skills were also one of the factors that this committee or the panel considered when the recommendation was made initially regarding the common standards.
Why are these standards so important?
Again, from a thinking perspective, it gives a cohesive look at the learning benchmarks throughout a system and throughout a country from this perspective. And it does allow, they do focus on higher level thinking skills. And so when you think about good instructional practice or research-based practices, the standards are very much in line what the research shows. And they're also internationally benchmarked. And so that was certainly a perspective that was very appealing to many educators, because not only were state and superintendents a part of this process, governors, but we also had national experts who weighed in and helped to develop the standards as well.
So across the United States, are all states on board with this initiative?
Most of the states are on board with this initiative. We adopted them in 2010 in the state of Michigan, but most of the states have. It's been interesting. You've had some states, I think originally it was about 48 states that adopted them, and you've had some states who have gone back and forth, but most states have remained consistently a part of the process and are working towards alignment.
And Michigan is one of those states?
Yes, Michigan is.
Okay. What criteria is there for developing the Common Core standards? When they developed them, what did they go by? Yeah,
the committee certainly did their research, and they engaged national experts such as Linda Darling-Hammond, who was very much a supporter and spoke on behalf of the importance of the Common Core state standards. And again, the focus was on good instructional practices. And one of the discussions around the Common Core standards was not to have as many standards as states have had, but to have fewer standards and to spend time going deeper with those particular standards. And so again, they do focus on those higher order thinking skills and the depth. I think teachers have the opportunity to really look at skills and to do some in-depth activities and analysis as they're working with students was certainly one of the, I think, more positive features of having a Common Core standards approach for the state.
So do we have Common Core standards in all the subject areas?
We do not. Currently, there are Common Core standards in the subject areas for mathematics and for ELA from the committee that did this initial work. We have looked at developing some common standards in other subjects. In fact, there are drafts out that's referred to as next generation science standards in the areas of science, and you may also hear some conversation or discussion about C3 standards in the areas of social studies. And so it's different groups that have galvanized, have come together, that see the value in having some common standards, but those, we only have official adoptions in ELA and mathematics.
So Alesia, what do the experts say as to the reason and importance for the Common Core standards?
In fact, Dr. Hill, we do have a video clip from one of our national experts, Dr. Linda Darling-Hammond, and in the video clip she gives examples and speaks to the importance of having Common Core standards and give examples of several countries that have had Common Core standards for a number of years. And the video clip also shows examples of something that I think we do very well in West Bloomfield School District, and it stresses the importance of project-based learning or inquiry-based learning. And so we're going to look at this video clip right now.
In the United States now, we're talking a lot about international competition, internationally benchmarked standards, and so on. And I wanted to see what is actually happening in terms of teaching and learning in other countries. So I've looked at a lot of high-achieving countries, and it became very clear to me right away that the issue is not just the standards that are written on paper. It's the entire teaching and learning system that is created in high-achieving countries like Finland and Singapore, Australia, Canada, Hong Kong, and others, that is very different from what we have in the United States. So we have a number of international assessments, and the one that is most referenced is the Program and International Student Assessment, which goes by the name PISA. And on PISA, the United States scores or ranks 35th out of the top 40 countries in math. We rank 29th out of the top 40 countries in science, but we typically do a little bit better in reading. However, we've gone down on the international assessments in reading each year that it's been given, and we've gone down on the math and science assessments as well. So we're losing ground, and while we're pushing scores upward on the state tests that we use here, I think the reason we're falling down on PISA is that PISA actually addresses higher order thinking and performance skills. In high achieving countries, they have school-based assessments as well as external assessments that are brought together in the accountability system that include things like research and inquiry, scientific investigations, extensive writing. Most of these countries do not use multiple choice testing. To any great degree, some don't use it at all. Kids are always having to write, analyze, explain their views, produce data, analyze data, both in the classroom and on the assessments. And so we need to point our system at these higher order thinking and performance skills if we're really going to be internationally competitive. So what you see in high achieving countries is typically a very lean set of standards. In Finland or Japan, for example, all of the math standards can fit in about 10 pages from K-12. They are very clear about what needs to be taught and when and how it builds over time, but they're not overly prescriptive. By comparison, in the United States, many states have created good standards. In some states, the standards are sort of a mile wide and an inch deep. There are 300 things to cover in each grade level, not a small number of things to do well and deeply. And the content coverage of large numbers of objectives superficially means that we end up reteaching the same thing over and over again year after year because we didn't stop and do it well and deeply at a moment in time. So our kids study fractions in 3rd grade and then again in 4th grade and 5th grade. Many of them don't get it. They're back at it in 6th and 7th, and there are high school students who still haven't mastered fractions. Whereas if we spent, as many countries do, a quarter of a year on a single topic, working on it deeply, you could then understand it deeply enough to move forward. And I think this accounts for the low achievement that we see in part in this country relative to other countries. In the classrooms, the teachers then do a lot of work around project-based learning. You would often in a classroom see students working on a lot of self-initiated work, individually and in small groups. They may be creating a student newspaper and working on their journalism project. They may be designing and conducting scientific investigations. When they're studying what a fish looks like, they actually will go out and get 30 fish and one on each desk and dissect the fish and figure out how it operates and so on. You'll see a lot of investigation and inquiry in every field. That's really their hallmark, is to create a nation of inquiring minds. And they also believe that it's very important for students to reflect on what they've done, what they've learned, and be able to improve on it themselves. Another vivid example would be Singapore. A group of students I saw who were trying to develop a natural skin treatment to keep mosquitoes away without using artificial products, and they had developed 5 different products and evaluated them and so on. They know how to design an experiment, they know how to conduct it, to evaluate their results, to then improve on what they've done. This is widespread. By contrast, science is disappearing from American classrooms. Under No Child Left Behind, with reading and math scores driving the accountability system, in low-income schools, science is barely taught at all. And in many schools, when it's taught as a list of facts to be memorized from a textbook and then regurgitated on a multiple choice test, not as a process of inquiry and investigation, not as a way of understanding and evaluating and learning about the world that you could actually take and apply in the world outside of school.
So Alesia, these standards have been adopted. Now what?
Yes, the standards are certainly essential, but they're inadequate by themselves. And so there are a number of things that staff members in West Bloomfield, as in a number of districts, have been working to do. One of the most important things is the curriculum alignment component. So our teaching staff has been working very hard to make sure that we have very strong alignment with the new standards in the areas of ELA and mathematics, and not only the instructional practices in the classroom, such as the units of studies and the pacing guides, but also looking at alignments. And because of the depth of some of the learning standards, it's also asking our teachers to shift their practices a little bit. And when you talk about the assessment pieces and you talk about the shift in teacher practice, it also will be asking different skills and different tasks of our students. And so we've been working very hard as a staff to actually secure that alignment and to make sure that we're making the appropriate adjustments with our current curriculum. But I also like to point out, we have been doing a number of things very well in the state of Michigan as well as in West Bloomfield. So certainly we're not throwing out everything. There are a lot of good things we already had in practice and in place, so it's a matter of making sure we have very strong alignment K-12 throughout the district.
Thank you, Ms. Flye. I'm Dr. Hill, and you are watching A Closer Look. We will be back in just a moment.
Pretty much a good day for me would be people leaving their hands off of me. I'm always called names. Everywhere that I go, there's always someone calling me names, calling me gay. I've been choked, thrown up against a wall, punched. Nobody's ever tried to help me.
Stay in touch with your community by watching Civic Center TV, television that's close to home.
Wow, these are really good.
You act surprised. Practice makes perfect.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
Welcome I'm Dr. Gerald Hill, and this is A Closer Look. I'm here with Alesia Flye, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction. We're also joined by West Bloomfield School District Curriculum Specialist Margaret Hendrickson and Kim Muncy. I'd like to welcome Margaret at this point to ask you a few questions about the Common Core. So Margaret, how do you use or how do you view the Common Core in terms of what's similar and different from what we had previously done or are currently doing?
As per what Alesia talked about earlier is every grade level has a certain level of content expectation standards written for them. So K-12, it sets up content expectations for every year. But what it also does is when they chose concepts for each grade level, they thought about things on learning progressions. So how does kindergarten concepts play into first grade, into second grade, into third grade? They really took a keen look at what does a student need to understand between grade K through 5, and how do kids progress through the concepts. They did a lot of work at looking at developmental understandings of math, how math understanding is developed, and so the learning progressions are really important. In fact, those learning progressions trend upward into middle school and high school, so that things that we learn in third grade impact algebraic thinking in the 9th grade when they're doing Algebra 1. So those standards are a little more intentionally designed than the GLICs. Not that the GLICs were bad. In fact, the GLICs, which used to be the K-5, were the Huskies that used to be, GLICs were K-8, and the Huskies for secondary. Many of the standards, topics we had in our GLICs parallel the Common Core standards. It's just that the Common Core standards reduced some of them and took them deeper. And when I say deeper, it meant don't just calculate something, know what it means, the math concept behind it. And so the Common Core standards have those learning progressions, hit many of the same topics we've always taught, but at a deeper level and fewer concepts. There was one other piece that was different than what our math standards were before, and that has to do with the 8 mathematical practices. So they set up 8, I would say, practices relative to the way we think about math. So one of them is a standard around claim evidence reasoning, having kids giving reasoning behind their mathematical problem solving and mathematical calculations and mathematical talk. Another word is precision of language, percentages of units of measure. So it's all of these thinking standards around thinking mathematically, because we don't want kids just to know the content of math, we want them able to use the math. So it set up the 8 mathematical practices. And those actually have been very powerful in our classrooms, because it's those practices that dig deeper into the standards and really have influenced a lot of the instructional design behind many of the tasks.
And Margaret, keeping that in mind, what do those practices look like in our classrooms in West Bloomfield?
One of the biggest practice that plays out is really the talk. One of the primary instructional professional development that we've really worked on K-12 that I think we did a really good job on in West Bloomfield prior, but we've really deepened, is how to have really good conversations in the classroom to share your mathematical reasoning. So having students really talk to one another about how they're going to tackle solving a problem, how they're going to solve the problem, work through the problems of the solving, and work through the steps of solving the problem, and then talking about their reasoning. So a key piece in any Common Core math classroom, and honestly any classroom across the content areas, is having kids having really good engaging conversations about their thinking and their reasoning behind their thinking. So if I look at those 8 math practices and I go into a classroom and I see good math instruction, I'm going to see good talk. I'm going to have all that talk centralized around really good math problems, and having the kids use manipulatives and tools to solve those problems. But if there isn't good conversations about why we're doing what we're doing, then I don't think I'd see a Common Core math classroom.
So Margaret, how do you define problem solving?
When I was in school, I remember the teacher getting up in front of the classroom, describing how to solve the steps of a problem, and then give me 30 or 40 more of those same routine math problems to replicate exactly what the teacher did. That's not problem solving. That is doing procedures to solve routine problems, but it doesn't require the kid to understand the concepts behind the mathematics of why you solve the problem that way, and it doesn't make the kids adaptable in taking that mathematical procedures or those mathematical concepts to more unique problems. So when I say kids are solving problem, it means they're non-routine. In other words, there's not a prescriptive way to do them. They're contextualized, so they're embedded in kind of a real world context. They're multi-step, and kids really have to grapple with how to solve them. In ELA, we talk about the just right reading level. Math problems need to stretch the kids' brains so they can really grapple with the math and say, does this apply, does this not apply? So that kids are really thinking through, if we're going to be engineers, if we're going to be doctors, we're going to be lawyers, we're going to be businessmen, we got to think through problems, not some prescribed set of steps to solve everything, because we can't solve everything with a prescribed set of steps.
And to do that, what kind of tools are important in math instruction in the classroom?
Well, as we know, in most any profession, there are tools and manipulatives that we use. So K-12, we really want to focus on experiences in the classroom that are inquiry-based, that are problem-solving based, but kids have to make strategic use of different tools, be that a number line for solving a problem, be that a graphic organizer to compare and contrast different math terms and concepts, be it a graphing calculator to visualize graphs, whatever kind of tools or manipulatives to help us solve the problem, but also help us develop understanding of the problem.
So besides being an educator, Margaret, I know that you're a parent.
Yes.
And how has what you've learned and know about math instruction influenced you as a parent related to the Common Core?
It's been very interesting, because one of the things that has mattered most to me in my learning of the Common Core and working with teachers is not just learning those routine procedures, but understanding the math behind them. So as I watched my pre-K and now kindergarten student at Gretschko Elementary in the 2-year kindergarten program, which I love, I watch her experiencing numbers in the world, and I interact with her differently. And so when she's in the bathtub and she's counting things out and she says 5, I'm a geek. I say things like, how many ways do you make 5? And in the car, when she's talking in the back and she's talking about counting, I say, well, how many ways do you make 10? And I have her show up her fingers and say 3 and 2. And I'll say, well, is there any other way to make 5? And she said, well, I could do 4 and 1. And so I ask her how many different ways. One of the biggest things parents could do for kids developing math fact fluency K-5, instead of just saying, what's 5 plus 5? What's 10 plus 10? What's 12 plus 15? Say something like, how many different ways can you make 24? How many different ways could you make 56? See how much addition or multiplication or division facts they could use to show that. My favorite story is when she says, this is, how many ways can you make 1? She'll do this, and then she does this because she made a fatter 1. But that's just where she was in her moment. I mean, if I could take her on, I could say 0.5 plus 0.5 is 1, but that's not where. I just ask her a lot of why questions behind what she's thinking and doing, and how many ways to make. That's important for kindergarten.
Hard to show a half a finger, right?
It is, it is.
We'd now like to talk with Kim Muncy, our English Language Arts and Social Studies curriculum specialist. Kim, what does it mean for a student to be college ready? We hear that all the time. So if a student is college ready in writing and listening and language, what does that mean?
So what we are really working towards with our students in language arts is getting them to be independent, so that they can read and analyze and talk about text and formulate their ideas for writing independently. And we build that across the grade levels, even within a school year through scaffolding. But our ultimate goal is to get the kids to be very independent. We'd like them to be able to read closely and critically, read multiple times through a piece of text, to really look for the deeper meaning, and not only what the text says, but how it says it is important. So they can also use those same sort of writer's craft moves or author moves in their own pieces of writing. We want them to be able to work collaboratively with their classmates to give oral presentations and communicate effectively. And yeah, that's about it.
And so we've talked about the Common Core standards being adopted in the areas of ELA and mathematics, but from what you're saying, this has application to other content areas. Can you speak to that application a little bit?
Sure. So we have these standards for language arts, and maybe I can back up and just say that language arts incorporates reading, writing, speaking and listening, and language. And so we have this set of standards for language arts, but we also have literacy standards for the history and social studies, science, and technical subjects. So our document is quite thick in that it includes the K-12 ELA standards and also the 612 literacy standards. So we also are expecting our science and social studies and technical subject classes to also teach the literacy behind their content areas. They don't need to teach reading per se, but what's it like to read as a scientist? Because that looks very different than what an English major will read in literature. They read it in a different way. So we want those teachers also to be teaching literacy to their students.
So if I were to drop in on an English language arts classroom, Kim, what might that classroom look like if they're teaching the Common Core standards?
So I'll go back to the close and critical reading. So students are going to read multiple texts on one subject. They're going to be looking for multiple perspectives. So they might look at an author, how one author portrays a message, how that perspective is different from another author, multiple viewpoints. They want to get a better understanding of the culture and how different cultures even present information. We'll see writing around different purposes. So in light terms, we write for one of three purposes: to persuade, to inform, or to entertain. And so the students are either writing with opinion or argument, depending on their grade level. They're writing informative or explanatory pieces, or they're writing narrative pieces. And that's really important because that is a shift that we're making that we'll see more of, is students in depth conversation and writing around that non-narrative pieces of text. So the informative and the persuasive writing pieces.
Kim, can you also tell us a little bit about, I know there has been great collaboration in making this shift to the Common Core state standards in working with Oakland schools, and I know many of our teachers have taken leadership roles in that work. Can you tell us a little bit about this shift in the work and this partnership with Oakland schools?
Sure. So West Bloomfield has had Readers and Writers Workshop for the last 9 years. And probably beyond that. So I'm in my 9th year in this position, and I can talk to, since I've been sitting where I sit now, our elementary classrooms have been around Readers and Writers Workshop. And Oakland schools entered into a consortium when the Common Core standards were adopted that put together teams of writers from across the counties, and it's an Oakland County initiative, but it encompasses all of Michigan to create units to be used in instruction aligned to the Common Core standards, but also would replace the existing units. So our writing curriculum now is all aligned to the Common Core standards, and we're using those units that were developed. And we refer to them now as the MESA units because they've been posted for public use on the MESA website, and it's the Michigan Association of Intermediate School Administrators. And we have teachers that have taken those units on and been part of the writing of those and part of the piloting of a review. And we have a teacher in our middle school who trains other teachers on it during summer institutes. So we've been involved from the very get-go on making those shifts, and the reading units of study are coming out. Some of them are being piloted this year, so we'll be ready to start integrating those next year.
Thank you.
In terms of helpful information for our families regarding the Michigan Department of Education, what is some helpful information that our parents and families want to know about the Department of Education from the Department of Education about Common Core?
I think one of the has to do with terminology. Our parents are very involved and are familiar with the standards that their students are learning. And again, we've referred to them previously for ELA and mathematics as GLICs, or grade level content expectations. And so it will be a shift, and now they'll hear them referred to as our Common Core state standards when we're talking about our learning progressions and standards for ELA and mathematics. And also there has been a lot of of discussion as well regarding the assessment. Our families have become very familiar with our MEP and MME assessments, but those will be shifting to a new assessment as well. And it's been developed by a consortium company. Smarter Balance is one that has worked with most of the states in our area. But again, the assessment company has not been officially determined yet, but the assessment will be different. It will involve a computer adaptive component of the assessment, and it will also, getting back to some of Margaret's previous comments, it will involve collaboration from students that will be a component of the assessment as well. So our families, beginning in the spring of 2015, can look forward to their students participating in a new assessment. And in fact, some of them may be familiar with it, as we do have a few of our schools that are piloting this assessment at the high school level, as well as Scotch Elementary. So families will definitely get more information in those areas, in particular from Michigan Department of Education, as well as from within the school district.
Thank you, Alesia, Kim, and Margaret. And thank you for joining us today on a closer look at Common Core standards. I hope that you have found this show beneficial, and any questions, I would refer you to these three intelligent ladies on the set. Thank you.